Well, well, well. That was interesting. That was one interesting race, wasn't it? Oscar Piastri takes his first ever race win. Lando Norris having all sorts of drama on the radio. Max Verstappen complaining and his radio sounding like a Daft Punk song the amount of times he swore. Not a great day in the office in general for Red Bull. Mercedes took what they could. Ferrari took what they could. And then McLaren took everything! Well, apart from the fastest lap point. But, yeah. That was George Russell's. But what a Hungarian Grand Prix that was. For me, the best two stages of the race, the best two battles in the race, was the battle between Fernando Alonso and Nico Hülkenberg. I think it was around lap 15 of the race, lap 20, when they were battling for what looked, in my opinion anyway, to be like a 7th or an 8th place finish. Obviously, in the end, neither of them scored points, but that's a whole different thing altogether. But it was a really good battle because it was two wily old foxes who have raced against each other for, 13, 14 years, battling against each other for, for a place. And it was amazing to watch. And the other battle for me would have to be Max v Lewis, because that battle was just amazing to watch. The battles between Verstappen and Leclerc and Verstappen and Hamilton, absolutely phenomenal to watch. That reminded me of like peak Formula One. I wasn't there to see it. I've grown up in the 2010s, but that was a brilliant race. There was some amazing overtaking. There was some amazing battles, and the thing is, we're going to look back on this season as one of the best in Formula One history, in my opinion, regardless of however many points Verstappen wins the championship by, or if somebody else wins it. Because honestly, the racing has been fantastic since the very beginning of the season. Even if Verstappen dominated the first half of the season, the racing was brilliant. And we've had 7 winners from 4 teams. Now, we haven't had that amount since 2012. We haven't had that many teams since 2021, I think it was. And, in terms of competitive teams, this is the most competitive the field has been since 2012, in terms of the top 4 teams all having cars quick enough to battle for race wins at certain points of the season. And, hopefully Aston Martin and can close in, but I don't think they are going to. They're more in the battle for 5th at the moment. So that's my thoughts on this season in general. We need to appreciate what's happening in front of us. We're watching history happening before our eyes. 2 new Grand Prix winners this season with Lando and Oscar. Finally a Monaco win for Charles, and today kind of broke the curse that he picked up after Monaco, where he struggled because he had a really good race today. And I would argue either him or Yuki, apart from obviously the 2 McLaren drivers, would be my drivers of the day. In fact, if I wasn't to give it to Oscar in terms of driver of the day, I would give it to Yuki because of the first stint he did, because he did a brilliant first stint on the medium. He did 30 laps in the medium, which was amazing. And same with George Russell as well. Those two had very, very good opening stints, very long opening stints as well. So fair play to them for that. And yeah, what a race to watch. So I'll sort of quickly go through it team by team and give my opinions on their races and what can happen from here. So we'll start at the front because I'd rather do first to last. McLaren, because this is going to be a very interesting debriefing, because some of the team will go, Lando, why didn't you just let Oscar through earlier? Meanwhile, others will be going, Oscar, well done, congratulations, you're a Grand Prix winner. It's going to be very mixed emotions, because some of them are going to be thinking, Lando, why didn't you just let Oscar through earlier? Like he probably should have done, rather than leaving it until lap 68, I think it was, when he let him through. It's very interesting, because the radio was very, how can I put it? antagonistic. It looked like there was tension between Lando and his engineer. You know, his engineer was constantly saying, "Do this for the team," and then he finally ordered him. He was like, "You have to give up the place to Oscar." I thought when Lando got ahead of Oscar, because obviously they were covering Verstappen, Hamilton, and Leclerc, especially Verstappen and Hamilton, that he would let him through, but he willingly. But I don't think he did willingly let him through. I think he only let them through because he only let Oscar through because it was an order. And I think, as Martin Brundle said on commentary, Lando lost wins in Austria, Britain, Spain, Canada, that he probably could have won. Now that's at least, if I do my math correctly, 7, 14, 21, at least 46 points. The gap to Verstappen is 76. Now, I don't know if the penalties come Verstappen's way, but if it is, then it's 74. Now, if you keep in mind Verstappen would lose some points as well, the gap would only be about 20 points between the two of them. Maybe even less than that. So you can kind of feel why Lando is getting can be quite annoyed about that. But considering where McLaren were at the start of last season, they have come leaps and bounds. And I genuinely think that they will be a threat for the rest of the season. I think that unless Perez gets his act together, or if Red Bull sack Perez, then they can beat Red Bull. Mercedes can as well, because Mercedes have the pace too. But it's about whether or not they can catch up to McLaren. Same with Ferrari. Ferrari need to improve on their performance, especially because they were really good in the first half of the season, first half of what has been the season so far. But since McLaren and Mercedes upgraded their cars, and I mean upgraded, Red Bull and Ferrari just haven't been as quick as they were before. They didn't have the gaps that they had to the others. In fact, those gaps are now non-existent. Red Bull are probably not even quicker than Mercedes now. It's Verstappen's own skill and talent that's keeping him so close to them. So, from McLaren's perspective, you're thinking, okay, yeah, good race from them. Then you've got Red Bull. Yeah, Red Bull are going to be ruining this race because they finished, what was it, 8th? Or 7th or 8th with Perez, and either 5th or 6th with Verstappen, we don't know yet because he might get a penalty. That's not a lot of points. That's what, maximum 16 points. Is that right? Yeah, maximum 16 points. McLaren have gotten 43. So that's a lot of points that they've lost in the race for the World Championship. So now you're thinking Red Bull, you're thinking, do we focus on next year or do we try and win the Constructors this year? And if I'm them, I'm thinking about next year. Because the way I see it, if I'm Red Bull, is 2026 is when the regs change. And they can't work on the cars until the start of 2025. So, put all the effort now into 2025, and then all of the effort in 2025 into 2026. Because then you get a head start. And that's what teams, I am sure that is why Sauber and Aston Martin and Williams are struggling so much. Because I think they're focusing on next year. McLaren are thinking about now, because they can see an opportunity. Although, with that being said, I think that they do genuinely have the capability and the resources and the people in their team to challenge Red Bull, even if, they focus on this year. They'll still be there next year, I think. It won't be it'll be a vice versa of BMW Sauber back in the day. But yeah, Red Bull's perspective, focus on next year. The Perez situation's hard because obviously we aren't privy to the legalities of his contract and everything. So we can't say whether or not, he can be replaced. I mean, people were talking about how there was a performance clause in his contract. We don't know if that's true or not. If it is, then he is under pressure. But Verstappen is a very tricky situation because Red Bull have got a problem on their hands. And that is, look at Mercedes and how well they are doing. Do they realise that there is a chance that Verstappen could leave? Are they thinking that? Because races like today give that sort of impression that they don't think they're going to lose him. Are they being complacent, or do they know something we don't? Verstappen is a brilliant driver. Probably one of the greatest of all time. In my opinion, not, but that's a different thing altogether. And he is still the best driver on the grid, in my opinion. So to lose him would be terrible. But races like today put a little crack in the relationship. And what's happened behind the scenes at Red Bull in the past year or two certainly hasn't helped the relationship either. So Red Bull need to work on getting that environment better and improving the car and making sure things are more to Max's liking. Because, I mean, the strategy today was very poor from them. They were about as flexible as a 90-year-old grandma who hasn't gotten out of her bed in 20 years. Like Grandma Josephine and Georgina from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And, you know, they're not going to suddenly go into sing and dance like Grandpa Joe is. You know, they need to fix what's happened today. They need to rectify it and get into that song and dance mode. They need to look at what went wrong, review it, and improve on it. Because that is how you get better in Formula One. You look at what other teams are doing, which is what Adrian Newey always does in the grid. He always looks at a car and he goes, interesting. And then, you know, look at your own performance and see where you can improve that. It's the same in life. You learn from other people and from yourself. You know, you improve on yourself and you learn from other people and you use that to make yourself better at things. That's how life is, really. I mean, I'm not trying to be wise here. But yeah, that's Red Bull. Ferrari, I'd be happy. Need to work on the car a bit more because it's still not as quick as Mercedes, McLaren or Red Bull, but the strategy was perfect today for Leclerc. Sainz just never really had the pace to keep up with Leclerc today, and so I think he won't be unhappy with where he finished because he probably couldn't have done any better. Leclerc will be buzzing because he's finished fourth. He may have thought maybe I could have gotten a podium because he was so close to Hamilton. He was only 4 or 5 seconds behind him by the end. But he'll still be happy with the fourth, considering how things have been recently for him. And that's going to help him out in his momentum going forward for the second half of the season. Because races like these shape a driver's mentality. So Ferrari, not really much to say on their end because they had a really good race. There's, you know, for me, the biggest thing for them is that they work on the car. Because the strategy was good for Leclerc today, and, you know, I didn't really notice anything wrong with Sainz's race. I mean, Sainz ended up catching up to Leclerc by the end anyway. I don't know. I don't know if they pitted Leclerc again or if Sainz just picked up the pace in the last stint. But I was so focused on the front and the battle between Hamilton and Verstappen, and obviously the civil war at McLaren. So that's the 3 of the top 4 teams done. Mercedes is the last big team that we do, and they had a good race. I think that they could have probably done a little bit better with Lewis Hamilton's strategy. They probably did pit him a little bit too early, but I think it's important that we point out that in the opening laps of his second stint, he was lapping quicker than anyone else. And I think that the laps he put in at the start of the second stint were the reason he stayed ahead of Verstappen. And that means by, you know, butterfly effect, whatever, Verstappen's incident happened because of that. If Hamilton hadn't put in those times, Verstappen might have gotten ahead and he probably could have beaten the McLarens. Nah, that's a bit of a stretch actually. He probably wouldn't have beaten the McLarens, but a good race from Lewis. The sort of driver world champion driver has one of the greatest of all time again with him. George had a very good race considering how severely and colossally Mercedes screwed up in qualifying. He recovered it really well, finished in the points, probably couldn't have done much more than that. And his bad luck at the Hungaroring, apart from 2021, when he managed to score points in the Williams, continues, because he's never really had good luck at the Hungaroring, apart from in 2021, as I said. Aston Martin, RB, Haas, Sauber and Williams are now, and Alpine are now left. We'll start off with Aston Martin, and not really anything good to say. Cars going backwards, upgrades are not working, and they really need to motivate Alonso again, because they are struggling a lot, and they were battling with the RBs today. And the main way to motivate Alonso is to build a better car. Simple as that. Now, Stroll had a very good race today. So that both of them drove quite well today, and I think they got the best result out of what was in front of them. Maybe they could have done a little bit better on the first stint when they were on the softs, but their strategy was really well done today, especially Alonso's, because if you notice, Hulkenberg pitted too early, and so he was out of the battle. But when Alonso and Stroll were holding up the Q cars with Albon and Gasly and co, and Tsunoda, and I think Ricciardo was in there as well, they covered really well with Alonso. They pitted the lap after the others started pitting, and as a result, he didn't lose any time. He stayed ahead. Well, he did lose. I don't know. He didn't really lose any time. He stayed ahead. Stroll dropped back a little bit because he went much longer on the stint, but that meant that he could push a bit harder, and so he basically got it to where it was before. I think he was behind Albon for quite a while though. So it was a good strategy from Aston Martin. The pace of the car is not great though, and that is what they need to work on. So that's my observation of Aston Martin. Then we have RB. Very good job from them. Did really well with Ricciardo and with Tsunoda. And they couldn't really have done much else bad or better, to be honest. They got points out of that situation, and that was probably the best case scenario for them, finishing 9th or 10th. They qualified 9th and 10th, and, you know, it was always going to be hard to get those points because of Perez and Russell coming through. So they did a very good job to keep up with Aston Martin throughout the race, and yeah, very, very good job from them. Alpine and Sauber, you barely saw them at all in the race. You only ever saw them on TV, really, when they were getting lapped, because they just did not have a good weekend. Alpine had a miserable weekend. 19th and 20th on the grid, aka back row of the grid, because of how bad they were in qualifying with the variable conditions. Gasly retires with hydraulic problems. Ocon doesn't really have any airtime at all, so their sponsors ain't going to be happy. Sauber, again, pretty invisible. Their performances have been so lackluster this season. They haven't scored any points, and we're at the halfway point of the season. And this is the worst Sauber have been in the standings anyway, since 2017. And they scored only a couple of points that season. They had Marcus Ericsson and Pascal Wehrlein as their drivers that season, and they did absolutely dreadfully. Who have I missed? Haas. There was promise, but the strategy was a bit too poor. And to be fair, the pace of the car probably wasn't that of RB's or Aston Martin's. As Hulkenberg said before the race started, when he did that quick 1 minute interview with Brundle, he said that the Astons and the RB's were fast. So you can't really expect much more. So yeah. So that's sort of my summarization of events in the Hungarian Grand Prix. If you want me to do more videos like these, comment down below. If you want me to do more videos like these, comment down below, and I might do them. But yeah, I'm going to go now, and I will see you all whenever the next stream may be. It might be at Spa, it might be for Spa, it might be before that, who knows. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. Also, it's not coming home.